Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. It's been a while. I've had a lot of things going on in my life, so that's why I took a little more time to make this video. I actually skipped a session. We played session 39 and session 40 of our Simba Room campaign before I had the time to make this video. For those who don't know the channel, we are playing Simba Room. It's a great game from Free League, a Swedish publisher. You really have to check it out. You can check my other videos. I talk a bit more about the game. But for today, I want to, of course, do the recaps of the two sessions. And I will talk about special rules that were used. There was a battle in the alleyway where we used some optional rules. I want to talk about that, namely the knockout rules. We had a very tense scene with a big mob with flaming brands and everything in the middle of a snowstorm. There was a lot of action that happened there. One PC almost got killed. So I want to talk about, I will talk about how I dealt with that. It's a pretty complex situation as a GM to deal with. A big mob, lots of moving pieces. The PCs weren't arriving in this scene all at the same time. So there was like a staggered effect. So I'll talk about that. I'll also show you, of course, the GM prep I made, because my goal is always to have 1 hour of GM prep for 4 hours of play. And I'm getting back to that in a hurry, because I didn't prep at all for session 39. And I did 1 hour of prep for session 40. So I'll show you the document that I did for session 40. I will also show you a few tools that I'm starting to develop, because as the campaign is moving forward, it's getting more and more complex. A lot of NPCs to deal with, especially in Simba Room campaigns, so many NPCs. So I want to show you a spreadsheet that I'm starting to make for my NPCs. I will put chapters in the video, so you can skip forward if you want to whatever interests you. My English is not my native language, so don't hesitate to use 1.25 or 1.5 speed. And before I start with the recaps, I want to just have a quick word about the situation in Ukraine. I'm doing a video about gaming. I'm not here to do any politics with you, but I just want to tell everyone that the situation there has let's say took a lot of time to get to understand what's going on, to watch a lot of reporting. It really hits me deep, because I went to Ukraine to shoot 2 travel shows. We did one travel show in Kiev and one in Lviv, and of course I'm mangling the names, but so Kiev is surrounded by Russians and is almost besieged, and Lviv is near the Polish border and is safer for now. But let's say that seeing these places where I've been when I was shooting destroyed, or just in a general state of panic, was horrible. It was horrible to see. I pray for the Ukrainians every day. I'm not a particularly religious guy, but I'm sending all my positive energy that I can to them. We've sent my girlfriend and I, we've sent some help over using different ways. There's a Ukrainian society in Montreal. They sent some materials over for the refugees or for the people in the country, medicine, clothing, stuff like that. But the fact is that I'm in North America, and it's not really efficient to send materials over there, because there's plenty to go for. In Europe, there's a lot of countries that can send material much quicker and much more efficiently. So I'm thinking that sending over money is the best help that I can make. So I wanted to talk about it because I'm sending some money. We can use the Ukrainian Red Cross to do that. That's one way. Of course, there's others, but I like that one because it's a very direct way. So I just want to show you quickly. If I go here, I can show you. That's the website. You can see redcross.org.ua, which is Ukraine English. There is, of course, a Red Cross Canada. We can go through that also. But I don't know, big organizations like that, I just thought I want to send some money right, like straight to Kiev, to the people on the ground that know what to do with it. So that's why I use this way of giving them some money. This is the donate link here. So it takes a while, but so yeah, you can give some money, you can use your credit card, and credit cards still are used and functional in Ukraine. So there you go. I don't care about what people's thoughts are on the political situation. I'm totally against war. I'm against this invasion. It's horrible. Nothing justifies bombing people and bombing houses and everything. So I just wanted to help, and I think that the reason why I wanted to talk to you about that is just because we can't give a lot of money. Like, most of us aren't that rich, and we don't necessarily have a lot of money laying around, but we're millions of people all over the world, and so if you just chip in just a little amount, it can make quite the difference. And it's an ongoing thing. It's not you give once and then it's over. I mean, this war is still going on, so we still need to show our support in and that's one way to do it pretty efficiently. So there you go. So I just want to come back to our game. That's our Roll20 main page that I use. I'll just zoom out a bit. So here we have Thistlehold, some pictures, some character art that I reveal as the characters, as my PCs discover things. So now that we've gone through these other topics, let's start the recaps. So we have 2 sessions to go. I have a few notes here. So in the previous video, I detailed the PCs. You can go check that out if you don't know my PC group, just so you can get an idea of who are these PCs, what's going on. We're using the Wrath of the Warden campaign, the first chapter of the Throne of Thorns, and we're using the Sellswords of the Sun side quest. That's part of that adventure, that first adventure. I wanted to do it first before this actual adventure kicks in. And so at the end of session 38, they had stalked the hideout of the sellswords in the northeast of the city, under the snow. They had pursued a man named Edragar and his young followers through the streets, and it had flipped around, and Mirizin and Bo, the goblin Bo, they were the pursuers, and then suddenly were pursued, and they fled Edragar and his goons, and they went to the boutique, the shop of Edagai, the Tinkerer Mage. When they got to the boutique, they saw that there was yellow paint all over the house that was done during the night. It was early in the morning. The snow still falling thick. It's a snowstorm, and they see death to the sorcerers, and you have the drawing of the ogre Vild, which is an ogre mage, and Edagai with the flames of the Prios sun under them. So that was quite a clear message of aggression. And that's where we ended session 38. So when we started session 39, I was still using the prep that I made for session 37, actually. So that's really good, because I had put in some 4 hours for session 37. So it lasted 3 sessions. So I had like almost an hour 20 per session. I mean, an hour 20 of prep per session, 4 hour of session. So I'm getting close to my goal, which is 1 hour for 4 hour of play. So we when we started session 38, they saw the graffiti. They decided, okay, Edragar just pursued us almost all the way up to the shop. So the Mirizin and Bo told the rest of the group what was going on. They decided, okay, we need to get back to them, at them, before they go back to the house and give some information to the other kids that are there hiding. So they just decided, okay, let's go. Let's counterattack. Mikariol, the young mage pyromancer from Alberator, went to the Temple of the Sun to fetch Lodemei, his cousin. It's a Templar girl. And while they were doing that, Wild, Mirizin, and Bo, so the barbarian team, barbarian, goblin, and ogre, ran to the house to try to catch them before they were aware or they could flee. They got into the alley, and I'll go back to the map for that because maybe you want to see a bit more what we're talking about here. So they were so the house is over here, and they went back to the alley. They went running all the way up here to the alleyway. So it's in this little part here that everything went down. So right here. So that's the house where the sellswords were hiding. And they came up here in the snow, always this big, heavy snowstorm. Not a lot of wind, you know, not too aggressive, but still real thick snow. They go in these little alleyways. We call them venelles in French. So that's like just I don't know, 1.5 meters between two houses, or maybe 2 meters max. So it's really narrow, and it's getting filled up by snow. And they go in there, and they check on the corner, and they see Edragar near the door to the courtyard, sort of checking what's going on and calling the kids, and everybody's exiting the house, and they're leaving the house because they've been discovered. And so the goblin Bo is the one that's doing the scouting. He gets seen. He gets pursued by Edragar. Edragar catches him and puts a knife to his throat in the alleyway there. At the other end of the alleyway, Wild uses his confusion mystic power on the man, and that will be critical. Because in that whole scene, this whole kerfuffle, actually the opposition was pretty weak, but because it's just young kids that don't really know how to fight that well. They're really motivated, but they're not competent. And the only real threat was Edragar, and Edragar had a hostage, but when he was confused, he sort of lost his concentration. So he tried. I think the goblin sort of squirmed out of his hands. He tried to hit him even though he was confused, but he didn't have all his head. He could only, if you check the power, you roll a die. It's either he does nothing, he attacks an ally, or attacks his foes. So he attacked his foes the first round, but the main thing that this spell did in this case is that it stopped him from fleeing. He wasn't thinking about fleeing at all because he was confused. And what happened is the barbarian Mirizin dodged in, went around, so he had advantage because there was a goblin on one side and Mirizin on the other side. So Mirizin went by Edragar and did not suffer a free attack because he was confused. And when he got back in the back, he used a knockout attack and knocked him out, cold. During that time, the young kids came on this side here. They called for friends. They were face to face with Wild, the big ogre. He's really big. He's got robust too, and he had a big mace. And so there was a little face to face there, and he bellowed at them or something like that, and they didn't dare attack him, and they just fled. And there was some other kids in the alleyway with Edragar that also fled. But they had this they captured this important member of the sellswords, and they brought him back to the prison. There he is. They left him there. It was a pretty intense morning for them. They had been disturbed during the night, so they were all tired. So they just gave them to the guards. They told them that they would come back because now they have this letter from Lassifar Nightpitch, and they're working on the behest of the mayor, so they have some authority. And they went back to the shop, which I found pretty interesting that they let the guy like that, and they took the time to eat and sleep and just get better. And then they went back at the end of the actually during that time before they went back, Lodemei went to temple. She went back to temple, and she talked with Deseba, the ancient, the old. because she's on very good terms with Deseba, and Deseba is sort of has noticed that this young Templar is not a fanatic, is still doubting, is very impressed by her because she's a living saint, basically. So she has a lot of influence over the Templar. So Deseba is sort of taking her under her wing and trying to teach this young woman how the law of Prios is maybe not as black and white as the church wants to say it is. And so Lodemei went back to Deseba because Deseba said that she would search around to see who this Dolani, the head of the sellswords, who is this man. And she just tells her that she doesn't know. She doesn't know because he says he's a black cloak, but at the monastery in Thistlehold, there are nobody knows a Dolani. Dolani has never appeared or was present or presented himself, so they don't know who this guy is. And she said, whoever this man is, they will strike again, and the best strategy is probably to wait for them to do so and to fight them back at that moment, and that they should protect Sarvola, because maybe the strike will come. Sarvola is a target, so it could happen there first. So that's interesting because I gave them like really precise counseling there, but they absolutely did nothing with that, and they did completely something else. So that's typical of players, and that's what I expect. I don't want to tell players what to do. I want them to surprise me, and every time they do, and that's why I'm still a GM after all these years, because it's fun. So for this little knockout in the alley, that's one of the things I'm going to talk after the recaps. So after this session at Temple, they went, well, there's a little slight thing. They opened a box that they had found in a ruin. They found a pipe that helps with clairvoyance, so that might come in handy later. And then they went back to see Edragar. When the sun is setting again around 4:30, it's the winter. They go back to the prison, they talk to Edragar, and Lodemei did a lot of the talking, but they decided that they would scare this guy by telling him that if he doesn't answer, they will deliver him to Captain Pergallo, which is a renowned torturer. And that worked. And at this point, I wanted things to move forward. I don't want to spend too much time on this side quest, so I didn't want it to be too hard. But afterwards, I sort of realized that it's a bit of out of character for fanatics to spill the beans like that. So I was wondering, did I go a bit too easy on the players? Because basically Edragar, what he did, he saw that he was in deep shit because they have the authority of the mayor. Like at minimum, he's going to be thrown out of the city. That would be the best he can hope for, and at worst, he can be executed. So Edragar said to Lodemei, if you promise on your honor, if you make an oath that you will tell Lacifar to let me go, I will tell you what you want to know. And she said, I can't promise you that he will let you go, but I can take an oath that I will ask him. And so he told them where the real HQ is, where Dolani is hiding. And later, after the session, I thought, well, he could have lied at that point. Maybe he told them another house, because he knows that if they go looking around for this house and it's the wrong one, but it's near the real one, then Dolani will know that people are closing in on him. So Edragar could have saved his pals, at least gave them a chance to hide, and saved his own life at the same time. So I think that's what he will have done. But you see, I'm retconning this because on the spur of the moment, I was in the action and I thought she made a really good persuasive roll, and Pergello is a scary man. So I thought, and this guy, I always imagined this Edragar guy to be, he's a bit older, he's a mercenary type of guy, so he's an opportunistic kind of guy. So his motto is live on to fight later. You know, he won't sacrifice himself. So that's why I was playing him like that. So after that, they decided, that was the end of session 39, by the way. And so they knew where to go next. So that was a good cliffhanger to end on. So the next session, I decided, I was wondering, well, I created some documents for the next session. I had 1 hour of prep time, so I will show you that at the end. I would just want to finish the recap first. Basically, I wanted for the action to continue, and my big question when I was prepping was, how do the sellswords react to that? First, what do they know? How fast does the news spread? Because there's two people have been captured. There was the first guy that they captured, and just a young guy that didn't know much. And now there's Edragar, which is one of the important sidekicks of Dolani. So Dolani, if he knows one of his head honchos is in the prison, that's getting close to him, and he knows that they could extract some information from Edragar. So I was thinking, okay, how do they react? So I will tell you how this session goes. You will see how they react, and I'll talk about what my thinking was when I prepped later on at the end. So we started session 40. They came back after doing this interrogation, they went back home to have supper. They bought some food at the Afadir's Triumph Tavern. They got together, and Lodemei told them what Deseba had told him. They were sort of pondering what to do next, and as players do, and they were thinking, okay, so this guy, we'll go check that other house, but we'll have to do it. Like, do we do it right now in the night? Do we wait at the next morning? Because the heavy snow was still falling. Like it's a snowstorm like that was never seen in Thistlehold before. Something crazy. And while they were doing that, at some point, they realized that the flaming servant of Edogai, he's called Stal, he was standing in front of the door to outside, with the little trap to see outside open. And he was just there with his flaming eyes in front of this little slit. And at some point he started reacting to something. So they noticed, they wondered, they asked him to step aside, they looked, and there was the neighbor across the street talking to another old guy. Same scene that happened a session before. I really like to put those same characters because they're just stock NPCs, just neighbors. But it's funny because it's been twice now that they're gossiping on their doorstep. So it's like a little recurring theme. And Bo is looking out, and one young guy runs across the street to the left. Bo is wondering what's going on. It's not clear. And they just, I think Bo at that point, because he was saying before that happened, he was saying, we have to be on our guards. They could react. They could attack us. The shop has been marked. Maybe we should leave and go elsewhere. That was his point. So he's feeling on edge. He just runs out after the guy. There's just random dude running in the street. He runs after the guy. And he runs and runs. So he ran on the promenade up and up and up and up all the way to the Toad Square. And now when he arrives at the Toad Square, what does he see? He sees here in this area like maybe 150 people gathering. People coming out of the neighborhood, the poor neighborhood on the right there, and on the left some are coming too. It's in a thick snowstorm. Not a lot of wind, but so much snow falling. A lot of people have torches. So it's really, you can imagine the scene, snowstorm in the dark at night with just these torches lighting the place, and overhead the light from the beacon 100 yards overhead. And at the Salons of Simbarum, there's something going on, and there's 5 guards that come running to the salons and go in the salons, because in the salons actually there's a brawl going on. Because what I did is I decided that the scene with Anadea and Arkel is happening right now. So Anadea was she's really into this idea of Prios, that Prios should not be a Prios of war, and that she's just very she's a young kid, and she's very passionate about what she thinks about the church and how the church is not doing its work like it should. And now with all these graffitis of intolerance against barbarians, witches, and ogres and such, she's really thinking, okay, this is getting out of hand, and the church isn't saying nothing and not trying to calm people down or anything. And so they went to drink off the stress at the salons, and this big brawl broke out, because at the same time the sellswords were there in the salons trying to talk to the people and convince them to go outside and to gather. And what's going on in this area is that Dolani has decided that he will speak to the people. He will rile up a mob, and he will try to take the initiative, because he feels pursued, and he's thinking, okay, we need to put people on our side. But when Beau arrives, Dolani isn't there yet. So Beau starts just getting in the crowd, trying to see what's going on. While that is going on, at the boutique here, Wild feels that Beau is in danger, because they have the soulmate boon. And he's thinking, okay, something's going on over there. We need to go. He leaves, starts running up the promenade. Mikariol takes his horse, goes to the temple to get Lodemei. Mirizin stays with Edragar at the shop to protect him, because Mirizin's player wasn't there. And then we need to make this big scene at the Toad Square. What's going on? And if I sum it up real quickly, there was multiple things going on. The players were not there at the same time, so I had to sort of keep it's a bit like, it's a split party basically. It's just that it's going to converge, but it's a bit of a split party. So what I did, I did a first part with Beau, because he arrived first, so I gave him the initiative. So he I think I don't remember, but I think he went first to see what was going on at the salons. He understood that there was a brawl or something going inside. Then he came back and went in the crowd a bit to try to see who's there. He noticed that there were a lot of sellswords in the crowd, preparing people, telling them that the idea is that there's a danger in town. There's dark magics being used to create this horrible snowstorm, and that the time is dire, and that Dolani will speak. And when Wild arrives, he arrives at the same time as Mikariol, because Mikariol goes to temple, tells Lodemei, come on, we need to go right now, and Lodemei takes the time to put on her full plate armor and to get her her horse from the stables. So I said, okay, you're really doing that? You're gonna get there much later. So Mikariol just went right back without waiting for Lodemei. So when he arrives, Wild is arriving pretty much at the same time, and they both see this scene, and they see Dolani near the statue, goes up on some steps on a crate and starts to do a big speech that I will describe later when I show you my notes, because I wrote that speech in advance. And Mikariol, being a very young, very proud Alberian, I should say, young man, he goes with his horse in the crowd, and he confronts Dolani alone. And he says that who are you? Whatever. I don't remember the details, but I remember that he sort of told him that he is nothing, and he is not in position to try to tell people what to do or what's going on. And he throws a brimstone cascade at the boxes, the wooden boxes under the guy. And he blows these boxes completely out, and Dolani falls back into the crowd. A gasp. People are really impressed and terrified, and some are enraged. And as soon as that happened, all hell breaks loose, because I decided that the men of Baumelo's henchmen from the very beginning of Masks of the Beast, they're still in town. Baumelo is still in town because the crown of the Mark of the Beast is still at the Ordo Magica, and the Ordo has refused to give it to him because he wanted the crown to bring it back to the Black Cloaks in the Twilight Monastery. So they're in town and they're sort of on the prowl. They're waiting for their time. And the other thing I had to decided is that Baumelo is sort of knows what's going on with this Dolani. He's aware. He's not personally involved, but he knows it's going on, and he asked Cargoy Salamos to help, because that's the wish of Jesibigai, the leader of the church. So there's like this faction of extremist Prios worshippers that are doing their bit. So it's not just the sellswords all alone. And so he sent his henchmen, and he said, just be there, help out. You know, if some people need some beating up, you can do that, because he knows the sellswords themselves are young and inexperienced. They are not necessarily up to the task for some violence. So they're there in the crowd, and when they see that happening, Michael throwing this fire, they shoulder their crossbows and they shoot 2 crossbow bolts with poison on them at Michael. Both hit, not gravely, but pretty bad. He sort of retreats with his horse. He's completely wounded, and that's when things get really hairy, because Beau goes through the crowd, stabs one of the Baumelo's men in the back. During that time, Wild is staying in the darkness outside of the light of the torches, because he knows that if the crowd sees him, they might all go after him. So he just uses his confusion again, and he throws some confusion on Baumelo's men that on one side that shot at Michael. Michael uses Bend Will to control another man. So these 2 men that were shooting at him are controlled. So he goes to them to have them protect him. So that was really interesting strategically. And while that is happening, of course, I have Lodemei arrive, because it's a question of a rhythm at the table. It doesn't really matter how long it takes to put your armor, and it really doesn't matter. If you think it does, I mean, the thing is that the minutes, the real minutes of real life that are going on at the table are much more important than the fake time of the story. When a player has been, his character is not there for, let's say, half an hour, he's been listening to the others play, you can't let it go on. It doesn't matter. You have to find some way to bring the character back in, because it's just not fun for the player. That's all. And when you get that rhythm right, nobody will say, well, that's impossible, he couldn't have made it. I mean, unless it's like, of course, if he's chained to a tree, you need to have something happen so the chains get removed. But you get the idea. So Lodemei arrives at that moment. I thought that it was dramatically appropriate. Her cousin has been shot twice. He's in dire straits in the middle of a mob. She's a knight in shining armor on her horse. So that's great scene with the fire and the snow, and it's really great. So she went in to protect Michael with her horse, and this whole kerfuffle lasted for a while, and they retreated. They went down the promenade with the mob coming after them. Of course, when things got hairy, during the speech there were around 300 people there. When things got hairy, 100 people fled. They're like most people, like it's still a lot of people that stayed, 200, but they were motivated because they're angry, they're scared. There was the Flayer a few months ago, killing people, stories of abominations in cellars and basements, and now this. So they're really on edge, and they so 100 left and 200 were still in the spirit to you know, stay there and be hostile. And when the PCs fled, about 60 or so, maybe 80, pursued them like hooligans. I told them it's like English hooligans, you know, laying waste in a city. That's the ambience. It's really not really. It's simple people that are afraid and angry, and they're coming for you. And what Mikhail did, he blew, he put a firewall here to block the whole promenade, so that stopped them in their tracks, and then they could flee behind this wall of flame. So after this crazy scene, they went back to the shop, and they saw that the people were following them through the streets, like little groups of the mob were going around, and they didn't know what would happen. What would these people do? So they said, okay, let's just grab our stuff and leave. And they all left, and they went down in the darkness. It was pretty crazy. When they crossed the Antique Plaza, they could see nothing, and they sort of went a bit random. And when they got to this place here, they saw some light, smelled some wood burning, and they saw the mission house completely in flames, with a lot of people trying to reorganize and start combating the flames. They went through, they talked with some guards, and then they went, because they wanted to talk to Marvello. They wanted to talk to the guard and give them the information that they have about this house, and they wanted to regroup. So they went back to this place. The guards gave them a house, one of the house in the barracks, so they could lick their wounds and relax for a bit. And when they arrived, I described that Marvello, De Camedo, the two captains, were drilling their men and preparing them for the intervention to come. And there were about, like, almost all the guards. So like 150 guards were in the courtyard being drilled and made ready to get out. But they didn't manage to speak with the captains because they were really too busy. And when they stayed a little bit of time in that house, Vilde decided to use his ritual of clairvoyance for the first time. So I described, the scene in the house and what it looked like and everything, what they did, and Mikhail was pretty wounded. He got some help. So they were catching their breaths, and when he used his clairvoyance, he used the magical pipe that they found in the ruin in the Blooming Vale, and it gave him an extreme clarity, as if normally these visions. I said that normally this clairvoyance will give you a hazy vision, a bit like a crystal ball type of vision of a place that you've been to. And now it was because he was using this pipe, all this in the smoke, this image appeared, and then suddenly it was as if he was there. And he decided to go check what was going on at the Witch and Familiar, because the Witch and Familiar also had been daubed. Like in the other session before, when they catched the first Sellsword of the Sun, they were doing some graffiti on this place, because it's a place with barbarians and a witch. Of course, nobody knows for sure if there's a witch, but the Sellswords have decided that there is a witch and that she shouldn't be there. And so he looked at he saw this vision, and I described how all the guests of the Witch and Familiar and Alomar were at the ground level in the wide main chamber with the fire pit, and he had his big axe in his hands, and they were all like not making a noise. And his mother, the witch, I think it's Agaba, she was sitting near the embers of the fire pit, and she was just in a meditation and doing a chant. And outside, in front of the Witch and Familiar, there was clearly some people yelling and throwing stuff at the door, and some mob was outside, pretty hostile. And they decided, okay, we need to go, and they just grabbed their weapons and they started out, and that's where we ended last session. So that was quite an action-packed evening. and I have many things to come back to about what happened during these sessions of pursuit, action, alleyway fighting, snow, darkness, all the good stuff. So I will. I think I'll start by showing you the notes that I had. So I had these notes here. And before I go into the notes, actually, I think I will go into the beer, because I usually have a beer for these little videos. So I'll just come back in a second and we'll start with the notes with a beer. Okay. Little beer, just a American ale, gluten-free. I'm always cheating. It's really hard to be gluten sensitive. So cheers to you. I hope you're listening this video in a quiet atmosphere, maybe at night with a little drink of your own. These games are so great because they give us so many cool moments, either alone when you're doing your prep, doing some reading, or when you're playing with your friends. My good friends, I've been playing with them for years, like from the very beginning. A few new players come in and out, of course, but most of my players have been playing with me for 25 years, and these games really, I don't know, it's more than just keeping in touch. You're really living things together, even though it's imagined, and it's a great pleasure. Really, it's worth every dollar and every minute. So, okay, let's go back to the tools that I used for these sessions. So these were my notes. My first session was what is the scene? How do I kick off this session? I was thinking the blizzard and going back to the house is hard. So that's funny because going back to the house wasn't really that long. But I did really set the mood with this first scene where there was no real challenge, there were, I don't think I used any rolls. But it just made me set the scene that this dark night of snow, basically you can't see outside, and it's getting colder and colder as the night is falling. What were the ingredients that I could use? Well, Dolani knows something is up since Edragar isn't back. That was the main thing. I had to decide how does he react to this bad situation for him? And I thought, when they started daubing the houses with paint, they already had divided who goes where, and all the sellswords knew where to go and when to go. And they had planned to. They did the Toad Square one. They did the Witch and Familiar was the first one, I think, or the second one, and then the House of Edragar, and they were going to the mission next, but with the idea of torching it. So what I decided is that he needs to act. He needs to react. He can't be passive. So he sends Kermis, just a guy that I invented, to get info at the prison, and Faralmo to the usual haunts of the sellswords, the Salons, and the brew. So basically, he sends two of his lieutenants to know what's going on with the prisoners. Have they spilled their beans? Are they alive? What's happening there? And the other one to start getting all the youngsters of the sellswords, the ones that never go to the real HQ, they need to know that something's up and that we need to react. And they're doing that because he's thinking, okay, I'm going to get everybody together and I'm going to create this beginning of a mini revolution. Kermis talks with the guards at the gate and learns that Edragar is in custody. He sees the PCs come out and tells them in the storm. So I didn't really think about that much during the session because they weren't on their guards with the snow and everything. There was no chance that they could see him And basically I just forgot about that part. I just didn't need that right now. I didn't want them to chase another guy. And so Faralmo tells the sellswords to gather at the Toad Square for a sermon and to bring all the people they can. So basically that's what's going on during the day. During the day, like Edragar was supposed to come back in the morning. So by noon, Dolani starts wondering what's going on. And he sends his Faralmo and Kermis out. And he says, okay, we need to act. Bomelo learns of the sellswords from his informants. He sends his men to investigate and assist. So everybody's sort of aware of what's going on. The tools that I will need, NPC rosters, I will show you in a minute. Maps of the hideout, Toad Square and Snow, I did not create these. I did have time. And so the next things I created was this here, the blizzard. Did not use that at all. I will though, because the scene with Bo pursuing this young guy and then discovering the crowd at the Toad Square, that was the most important part. And I said, okay, there's no big wind. I really wanted that scene with the torches and the snow and all of that. So I just decided that the wind would rise later. When the wind does rise, and that will be next session, when they go back to the Witch and Familiar, the temperature is going to get really bad. And now you're going to have this rule that will kick in. So strong -1, cumulative per 15 minutes exposed, or lose 1 toughness. So every 15 minutes you roll a strong -1 the first time, 2 the second time, 3 the third time, and if you fail, you lose a point of toughness. I don't really need, it's just it's a pressure tool. It's not there to be realistic. It's not there to, that's why it's not really significant, the damage it does, and that's not the point. It's just that every time they'll roll this, they will be reminded that they're fucking freezing out there. So that's important because it gives this information to the players, and it gives it in a way that it's negatively mechanically affecting them. So they're feeling it in a mechanical way, the pain of the cold. Doesn't really matter how much toughness or whatever. And this is really interesting here, the gusts of whiteouts. So that's when you have a big gust of wind in a snowstorm. The snow on the ground goes up and mixes with the snow falling, and it's a whiteout. You can't see a thing. You can't see your hand like for a few seconds or a few minutes or however long it lasts. So this is going to be really interesting if there's some fighting in the next session. Okay, at the Salons, you could read that on your own, but basically I described that, but from outside, because they never went in. So I just this is just notes for me, actually. So I know, because they might ask around, and they might some people might tell them that this happened. The attack on Sarvala pretty much as printed in the adventure, but my players weren't there. They completely forgot to go check on Sarvala. If they had, they would have maybe saved the mission, but they didn't, because they don't think that much. And they just went to the obvious thing, and they forgot about the rest. So that was, of course, Dolani's plan. When he the torching of the mission house was for later. It was like it was the end of a process. They planned on doing some more graffiti and getting this mob together on a much deeper level by talking to people for maybe a week. And now they were rushed, and so they did it right away. And now the mission is burnt down to the ground. So here is the sermon of Dolani. This I used. So you see that I decided that the crowd would assemble near the Toad with many torches and weapons. They are the poor, so I know who these people are. They have felt endangered during the flares' depredations, left to rot by the authorities. Many have been fed, blah blah blah. So this comes as a new thing for the PCs. They didn't really realize how much anguish the regular population, the poor people, lived. Most people that were killed by the flare were in the north part of town, and it was poor people that were getting killed. So they've had it tough, and now they are very scared because of this snow. So 24 sellswords are there, mingled in the crowd. And there is also 12 other sellswords attacking the mission house. And Bamulo's men are there too. What I did actually is that at some point, Bo, when he was in the crowd trying to understand what's going on, he listened, and I used these two first lines in the mouth of a regular sellsword. He was saying that to the crowd. He was saying, okay, we need to get together because the authorities are failing us, because you see what they did, all hell breaks loose with this snow and everything, and they cleaned up the toad, and the toad is an abomination. We should destroy it and burn it. And they like the toad. And why do they like the toad? It's because Lassifor is in bed with a witch, and he likes the goblins and the ogres and all that kind of stuff. And I think I used this line too, if I remember. That elves are in the town, and that freaks people out because the elves attacked the town when it was being built, and many people died. So they were, oh shit, the elves are in town. That's why there's this snow and the darkness. And later you can read the rest. So basically that's the thesis of Dolani, is that it's not that there's snow in itself, it's that the snow and the darkness is being caused by the elves. And for my players, that was really interesting. I didn't even think about that when I wrote it, but they thought of the snowstorm that the elves in Prios Pass were able to invoke, because when they faced the few elves in that first adventure, there was also a snowstorm that was caused by the elves. So they thought, okay, so maybe there are elves in the town. And here's like the fake news part. They are a cabal of elf worshippers, and they're using their fallen religion to throw the whole fight down, blah blah blah. If the mayor is, so he's accusing the false Templar, he's accusing the PCs basically, and he says that maybe even the mayor is complicit, and he wants the crowd. That's his end goal for right now. He doesn't want to create a revolution to destroy the town, because he's a fervent believer. He wants to protect the town and the people, but he wants the mayor to act against the PCs and other people he will point out, to prove that he's a good Prios worshipper, because if he doesn't, then maybe he should be overthrown. Bomelo's men, they were beaten by the PCs in the first adventure. They were whacked in that alleyway, and now they have heavy crossbows and some poison on the bolts, because they know that they need some edge to face the PCs. They can't just go at them frontally and stupidly. So they're going to play mean and be more intelligent. So that pretty much happened. I printed all those rumors, didn't use them, and I had the new thing that I'm trying to do, because I have so many characters, it's getting busy. I just put a lot of stat blocks at the end. So I had my Swords, Dolani, some veterans. I took these veterans, I don't remember where I took them, but I thought that the Dolani crew needs a bit of muscle. They can't all be just youngsters. So the people around Dolani, the people close to him, like maybe 5 or 6 men, they're veterans. And here you have Bomelo, the experienced Black Cloak. You've got some battle-trained Jakar. That's if they go to the Karlagoy mansion. The henchman, Bomelo's henchman. And here I put Serek Statio because I thought Serek would be drunk at the Salons in the big barroom fight, so he might at some point come out and do some shit. And the other ones I just got there just if I need them. And here I have the Town Watch. And there you go. So yeah, those were my notes for this session. Now I want to talk about this the knockout scene, and for that I'm going to need the rules from the Advanced Player's Guide. A lot of people playing Symbaroum say that characters become overpowered pretty quickly because they get a lot of armor dice. They can become invulnerable to low power output NPCs. Like a regular NPC will do 4 or 5 damage per hit. If they have advantage, then they'll get a d4. So they'll get a +2, so maybe it comes to 7. That's a bit more interesting. But still, like a heavily armored Templar with mystical powers that protect him will be really hard to hit. So of course you can create super powerful NPCs that have the master two-handed blade ability to avoid armor or things like that. But if you do that all the time, then the the players will think, well, you're just picking on them. And my argument, and I'm not sure I'm right, you will tell me, and I will tell you as we move forward during this campaign, is that actually there are some rules that you can use in the Advanced Player's Guide that can really help make fight scenes really interesting, even if you have weaker enemies against the PCs. Of course, you have to know that for me, a successful fight scene is not a scene where the PCs are in danger of dying. That can be fun, but it's not conditional to that. Most of the scenes that I GM that are fight scenes, the odds are really in the favor of the PCs, but there's so much going on, there's so much movement, there's action, there's things being destroyed, things being stolen, there's all sorts of stuff happening, innocents in danger. So it's like a chase scene, or it's scenes that are really fun to play, really fun for the players, really fun for me, but it's not about who is dead on the ground not moving in the end. That's not the point. You know, it's a struggle, it's a physical struggle against opponents. And it's like if you play football, you know, you want to score the touchdown. There's a lot of excitement in that. And the goal is not to kill the other guy. So you need to bring that kind of all these different goals into your fight scenes. And in the case of this scene that I had in the alleyway, it was a scene with Edragar, and they needed to capture him. So these rules, these maneuvers are really, really useful. You can seriously, you can threaten, I would say, pretty much any PC with these. You really just have to be creative as a GM, and don't hesitate to use them. But the most dangerous ones are really the hold and knockout. Knockout is harder to pull off, but hold is really dangerous against heavily armored PCs. In my case, I would definitely say that if multiple opponents are trying to hold, then they will have advantage. And the +2 to hit, I would apply to this strong roll. Because there are a lot of people and they can grab more easily. So the advantage would be applicable in my book. So they did knockout. That's what they used. If you attack from advantage, aiming to render the target unconscious, blah blah blah. 1d12 against the damage value. If the outcome is lower than the value, the target is knocked out. The attack fails, you lose advantage. Okay. So he rolls just 1 damage. I was trying to see if armor came in there. So armor does not come in there. So this is one of the ways you can endanger a heavily armored PC, because the armor has no effect here. It's a bit weird. I could, I might definitely give a plus, or do something about that. If the person is wearing a full helm, a full knight's helm, it could help protect against knockout. That would be logical. I think that's the way I played it, actually. I think I played it with armor being deducted. And so the remaining damage would be used against a d12. So if you can't cause any damage, then you can't really knock out a person. I'll have to think a bit more about that, see what I think about that. Because the idea here is that advantage is not something that you can necessarily have that easily. And that when you're doing these combats, the fact that advantage gives you more damage, more chances to hit, and the option of doing a knockout, and there's some other things that sometimes need advantage. That means that opposing the enemy in a way that he can't have advantage against you is critical. And that is great because that's tactical positioning. That's the way you fight. And so intelligent fighters like the Templars in Wrath of the Warden, they in their tactics they fight back to back. So they can't be surrounded in a way that gives advantage. So that kind of strategic positioning is really interesting because you can play some NPCs that have that knowledge and that won't be easily outflanked by the PCs, and others will be stupid and will just charge in and can be easily outflanked. And same thing for the PCs. If the players don't pick up on that, then they might expose themselves and have a harder time. So that's a great little rule here that I used for that scene. And there you go. So I really encourage you guys and girls and gals to go through these and see how you can use them for your games, because they were a big plus for my game, and I'm really happy that they published those. It gives you a lot of good guidelines also to how to rule things that aren't in the rules. It gives you some insights on a bit of how the designers are thinking of using different ways to make rulings, and it can give you some ideas for other rulings. Last thing I want to show you before we finish this video is that it's one tool that I started creating, and it's this here. So this is my NPC list, if you want. So I have the names. I have a bark. That's from Benjamin. Thank you, Benjamin, for that cue. Barks are things that are written for NPCs, stock NPCs in video games. Just little things that, the guy across the street is saying if you get near to him. And these little phrases are stereotypical, but if they're well written, they can really give a lot of flavor and give you a good idea of who is this person in one line. So the idea of having a bark for my NPCs is that I can quickly, just by reading the bark, get back into character, if you will. So I haven't done it systematically. As you see, there's a lot of filling in to do. I should have done this from the beginning because it's really long. I took all the description that I already made from all my other preps. So I have a lot of characters here. You can stop the video and see what I wrote for those. So there you go. So all of these I'm going to put in the main document, in this document. And what I added at the end on the right here is at which session this character appears for the first time, and I put in play with X, just because I can sort here. You can't see it, but you can sort any column, and that will sort everything. So that's why it's really useful to have the faction, the location, because I can quickly say, okay, I need my Ordo Magica cast. Where is it? I'll just sort it. So in play makes me able to sort all the characters that are important right now. They can pop up real quick because I just need to put in X for the ones that I want to have available, handy. I decided to do that because it's just that I would put this in my regular notes normally, and I have also my little my notebooks that I love, but the notebooks, the problem is just that it's too much information, and I if I have it in session 33, then I have to copy paste it, and sometimes the players do things that you don't expect, and then suddenly they're going to see this person, but this person, the last time they saw him, it was in session 18, and you don't even know if the notes were there because maybe you used the time they were in session 15. And so it becomes a whole mess. And I just thought, okay, I need to be more logical about this. And this actually is Jim Davis from WebDM that uses a kind of a spreadsheet type of thing for his information about his campaign. And I just thought, yeah, spreadsheet is great because the advantage of a spreadsheet is the sorting per column. So you can have multiple categories and you can sort. So that means that it's really like a little banque de données, data bank that you can really pull info from. So that's the idea. And I'll keep doing it. I'll keep it rich because I love role-playing and I want my NPCs to be very different from one another. And I want a bit of consistency, a minimum. It's not, you don't need to be completely consistent because if you can't remember it, your players can't too. So, but you know, some things need to be consistent, and this kind of tool, this kind of spreadsheet tool will do the job for that. So we've come to the end of this video. I will be shooting, like in real life, a series during the whole month of April. So we'll have one last session next week. So I don't know, I'll try to make a video for that one after the session. I don't know if I'll have the time to do that, but I'll try. And then it'll be a month off and we'll see each other in May. So have fun, keep it light, keep it bright, and game on. Thanks for being there.